Hi, Mike. Welcome at the next episode of Uniface Universe. Today I'm going to talk about microservices together with Mike. You know Mike as product manager at Uniface. So Mike, let's get started.
Hi.
What's your history with the company?
I've been with Uniface as a product since about 1993. Started on a help desk, been through pre-sales, post-sales, consultancy. I left for a while, came back in 2008, became a subject matter expert, and then 2014 moved over here into the Netherlands to work in product management, and I'm now product manager.
Nice. And what do you like about the company?
It's always different. You know, there's always new innovation going on, always new things to learn, always, every day is just different. So it keeps me very busy and occupied.
Good. Today we're going to talk about microservices.
Mm-hmm.
What do microservices mean to you?
So microservices for me is it's a way of being able to break up your application, to make it independent so that it can scale, to be able to meet sort of big scale business needs of today. It gives you a lot of benefits in being able to create applications which are scalable, but they're also very stable. The whole architecture gives you the opportunity to be able to create an application that is going to last.
So how can they help the end customer?
If we look back in the history of application development, we have for many years worked on monolithic applications. So one big block of code which sits and runs on a platform. I mean, you're able to scale it by putting another platform in and possibly putting it behind a load balance or something like that. But with the microservices, what you're doing is you're breaking up your application into component parts. So you're finding out areas of concern, areas of your application which can be developed, tested, deployed, and scaled independently. Which means that you might have a part of your application which is really busy, and you want to be able to make that scale very much more than another part of your application which only a couple of people use and only infrequently. So you can break up your application, you can sort of make areas of concern, you can put clearly defined APIs around it, and then you can scale it to be able to meet your business need. And when you start looking into things like cloud and other technologies, especially orchestration like Kubernetes, etc., you really can get a lot of benefits from being able to do that.
And when we look at your company, I think it's a sort of a better together story. Mm-hmm. What kind of synergy does exist between Uniface and microservices?
Well, with microservices, if you look at it, how it's described, what you have is loosely coupled areas of your application with some kind of lightweight protocol in order to be able to communicate between them individual subsystems or services, as they call it. With Uniface, because we've always had these components, they have always been loosely coupled. It means that through configuration you can define your services, and the backbone, that communication between the various systems, is just there and inbuilt and ingrained and in the genetics of the Uniface applications. So it sits really well within that kind of environment.
Okay. Don't forget, if you have questions at home, please ask them, and we get back to them. Mm-hmm. Mike, how do you think Uniface can support microservices in practice?
What you have to do is you have to consider your application. You want to create areas of concern, which are so. You want to create areas of your application where one service is responsible for maintenance of that information. And with Uniface, because you have the projects and you can have multiple projects, it really does allow you to be able to do that and to be able to share components between subsystems if that's what's needed to be done. It's just the fact that with the Uniface applications that you are able to define your architecture at deployment rather than in development time really does make the ability to be able to change and to keep up with your business needs much easier.
And as a Uniface developer, what skills and concepts can I use when I want to embrace microservices?
Well, I mean, you're looking at your standard Uniface development practices. So you need to be able to model your information. You need to be able to maintain your applications. You need to break your application up, possibly your database up, into separate databases so they go along with their microservices. And it's basically the standard Uniface development paradigm, and it's just a question of breaking your application up. So we've long promoted sort of service-oriented architecture, where you move your business logic out of the end component into a back-end service, and that's it's that story still. A lot of people have done it.
So nothing is new, in a way.
Well, very few things actually are completely new. They come round, they have a different name on it, but they tend to sort of be variations on a theme. You've always been able to, create a subsystem within Uniface, be able to create a clear API on it, have that API be able to talk into a specific database, to be able to move it, to be able to deploy it across multiple platforms. It's always been able to do it, and Uniface has always offered you the Uniface request broker, the URB in the background, which gives you that communication between these individual services. So, the platforms for being able to deploy now, especially in things like Docker, means that you can much more encapsulate in a very lightweight fashion the application subsystem. Before, you might have it on multiple different VMs, but they were much heavier, much bigger. But when you go into the services, especially in containerized services, they become much smaller, much more lightweight, and independently scalable, and done automatically.
And if I have an existing customer, an existing business, do I have to rebuild my entire system when I start with microservices?
I think that what you have to do is you have to you don't need to redevelop your whole application. The logic is there, the business knowledge is there, the advantages which you've always had within your application, the reason why applications remain successful, that's already there. So you could remove that and locate it into common areas rather than rewrite it. There's probably some re-architecting, some refactoring, but the logic is still there and is still accessible through some kind of microservice way of being.
If you have experience as a Uniface developer with microservices already, do let us know. And how can Uniface support me if I want to start with microservices?
Well, if you're already a Uniface developer, you pretty much have everything you need in order to be able to get going. You need the development license. Either you can get that through your normal development license, or the community edition is now available, so it's freely available to be able to get hold of. And then it's creating just a Uniface application. You think about how you want to structure your application. There are things you do have to consider when going into microservices. So, what you want to do is you want to have shared services. So, for instance, you wouldn't want every single service to do its own authentication. You would probably want to have a service to do authentication, and then use something like Java's JSON Web Tokens in order to be able to communicate, to pass between the different services to show you've been authenticated. And I believe Peter's been giving a demonstration and a talk about that during this session, so that's quite useful. Other things you might want to consider are logging. So if you have a request come in, it might be directed across multiple web services, and you want to be able to collate that into a single environment in which you can see how that behaved across all the different services, rather than going digging into each one. So your application might need to be augmented with some extra things in order to be able to understand what's going on and to get the full benefit out of it. But the actual business logic, it's breaking it up, it's finding out the areas of actual concern, and then to encapsulate it into a subsystem, and then allowing it to grow as you need it to grow. Another great benefit of breaking it up is that you actually end up with domain experts in particular areas of your application. So you can progress one subsystem and the other ones can then use it when it's ready, rather than having to do everything at the same time. But that means that you're dealing in a much smaller area. You are developing in that small area. It means that the change is probably smaller in that one area. It means that it's more testable.
Less risk.
It's less risk, and it's very much an agile way of working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Is there something else we really need to know about microservices?
I think that about the microservices. I mean, it's a really big thing, and it's something that's become really popular with containerization, because again, you don't need to have big VMs which are there or bare metal in order to be able to deploy your application. You can put them into these orchestrated environments
And get started right away.
And get started right away. And you take your database, wrap that up into some kind of service as well, and you can then scale across horizontally across. If you had some kind of SaaS kind of offering and you were bringing on a new user, it's much easier to spin up a whole environment just for them. And but as you say, it's a lot of this stuff has been around for quite a long time, but it is something that Uniface is really adept at being able to do, and it's really built in. So that a lot of technologies you have to really consider very carefully that communication protocol that goes in between the components. But Uniface gives you that brokering and asynchronous and synchronous calls going on between them. It really does fit in with a Uniface application.
Nice. Mike, thank you very much for your clear explanation.
Thank you.
And I say let's get started. Thanks.